Hello and welcome to Vantage. I'm Alyson Le Grange. Let's get started. The Iran-Israel war may be over, but the aftermath is still being debated. Did the US strike obliterate Iran's nuclear program, as Donald Trump claims, or was the damage limited? A preliminary US assessment has been leaked, and it contradicts what the US president said. Iran's nuclear program has been set back, but by months, not years. What does this mean for America's strategic calculations? Was the US strike ineffective? Also on the show, what's the situation in Israel and Iran one day after the ceasefire? After Iran, will Netanyahu also end the war in Gaza? At the NATO summit, will Donald Trump torpedo the alliance's unity? What does the latest Axiom mission mean for India's space aspirations? Why are mass protests being staged in Kenya? And why is Thailand's Prime Minister facing resignation calls? All this and more lined up, but first, the headlines. Is Pakistan's Prime Minister reaching out to India? Shehbaz Sharif claims he is ready for meaningful dialogue with New Delhi. Sharif expressed his views during a phone call with the Saudi Crown Prince. Ties between India and Pakistan have nosedived since the Pahalgam terror attack in April. India responded to it by targeting terrorist bases in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. The Indian Armed Forces take part in the multinational exercise Conquest 2025. It's taking place near the Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia. The exercise, which began on the 14th of June, will continue until Saturday. Troops from 24 countries are participating. This is being co-hosted by the Mongolian Armed Forces and the US Indo-Pacific Command. Armenia's Prime Minister says his security forces have foiled a coup plot, claims it involved a senior cleric. Since 2020, the Prime Minister has been at loggerheads with the clerics of a powerful church who wanted him to resign after Armenia's defeat to arch-rival Azerbaijan over the Karabakh region. The British Prime Minister doubles down on his controversial plan. He wants to cut disability and sickness welfare. But Keir Starmer is facing a major rebellion by lawmakers. His government is under pressure to slash a spiralling benefits bill, which is needed to generate growth from a sluggish UK economy. And Indian origin Zohran Mamdani is set to become the Democratic nominee for New York mayor. He stuns political veteran and former state governor Andrew Cuomo. New York is staunchly liberal, and this primary could determine who becomes its next mayor in the November election. The US strikes did not destroy Iran's nuclear sites. The program is still intact. At best, it has been derailed by just a few months. That's the early assessment from American intelligence. A preliminary classified report has been leaked. 2 facilities are still believed to be intact. This includes Fordow facility. It was the primary target of the US operation. The US used its most powerful bunker buster bomb to take out Fordow. The GBU-57, one GBU-57 bomb weighs over 13,000 kilos. America dropped as many as 12 such bombs on Fordo, but even they couldn't reach deep enough. Fordo has been built 300 feet below the surface of the earth. It seems to have survived the strike. Now, Fordo and Isfahan facilities suffered moderate to severe damage, while Natanz took the worst hit. Now, where does this leave Iran's nuclear program? Can they still build a bomb? Can they fix these sites? And how quickly can they recover? Before the strikes, US intelligence had made an assessment. They said that if Iran really wanted a bomb, it could get it by 3 months. The Americans have a new assessment now. The timeline has been pushed back, but only slightly. It would now take around 6 months, maybe even less. A big reason for that is the uranium. Iran moved most of its stockpiles before the strike. It could be hidden at undeclared sites. Israeli officials claim Iran could be running small secret enrichment facilities, and that's how they can keep the program alive. Now, what if Iran wants to scale up enrichment? Tehran would still need facilities like Fordo. Now, some news outlets have published an early damage assessment. It doesn't point to anything Iran can't repair. Reports say at Fordo, Iran may need to restore electrical systems and reinstall equipment that was moved before the strike. The main challenge right now is access. The blast sealed off the underground tunnels, but once they manage to get in, it may just be a matter of time before the operations resume. This is embarrassing for Donald Trump. He claimed Iran's nuclear facilities were obliterated, but his own intelligence agency disagrees with that. The strikes may have delayed Iran's progress, but the program is still intact. And far from the total elimination, like Trump would have hoped for, the intelligence leak has struck a nerve. Now, Trump has responded with an all-caps post on social media. He said, and I quote, "The nuclear sites in Iran are completely destroyed."
They really don't know. I think Israel's going to be telling us very soon because Bibi is going to have people involved in that whole situation. We hear it was obliteration. It was a virtual obliteration.
The White House issued sharp statements as well. Trump's press secretary spoke out. She called it an attempt to discredit Trump. However, U.S. Vice President did make an admission. That's J.D. Vance. Now, Vance suggested that Iran's uranium stockpile is still intact. So the situation remains risky. America's goal was to stop Iran from building a nuclear weapon. But what happens when Tehran starts enriching again? Will Trump order another strike? Will he order an even bigger mission than last Sunday? One that risks a wider escalation. A diplomatic breakthrough could still prevent that, but Trump's statement today offers little hope.
The last thing they want to do is enrich anything right now. They want to recover. And we won't let that happen. Number one, militarily we won't. They're not going to have a bomb and they're not going to enrich.
The U.S. says it wants to pursue a nuclear deal now, but some disturbing reports emerged from Tehran today. Iran's parliament approved a bill. It calls for a suspension of cooperation with the IAEA, that's the International Atomic Energy Agency, the UN's nuclear watchdog.
Despite the recent attacks on Iran's nuclear facilities, the International Atomic Energy Agency has not condemned them, not even superficially. It has undermined its international credibility, and for this reason, the Atomic Energy Organization of Iran is suspending its cooperation with the agency until the security of its nuclear facilities is guaranteed, and Iran's peaceful nuclear program will proceed at a faster pace.
The Speaker of Iran's parliament also spoke about the nuclear program. He said Iran will accelerate it now. He said that it would be a civilian program, but that's unlikely to assure the likes of Israel, the arch rival of Iran. Trump's shaky ceasefire seems to be holding today, but it rests on a knife edge. One misstep, and this could unravel quickly. The ceasefire is holding. After 12 days of war, there is hope for peace, for normalcy and stability. But what is it like inside Israel and Iran? Are the people happy about this outcome? How are they coping with the trauma of daily airstrikes? Tonight, we'll take a closer look, starting with Israel. In the city of Haifa, life is returning to normal. People are out and about on the streets. Cafes are semi-packed and the residents are hopeful. They feel safe enough to go out and enjoy their day.
Today I feel freedom. I feel that I'm back to life. I went to do gym and the sun, and I can, go outside and have fun. It's life. And I know now much more to appreciate it. To appreciate and to be grateful for life.
I hope that the agreement now, the ceasefire with Iran, I think Gaza should be the part of it because it's all connected. They was part of it. But actually we don't know what's going on in the closed room, so we hope for the best.
Same in Tel Aviv. This is the largest city in Israel. It was pounded by Iranian missiles for 12 days. But again, normalcy is returning. A good indicator of that was the crowd at the beach. In the morning, it was packed with people going for a swim or a run. At night, the volleyball enthusiasts were out.
Well, it's mixed emotions, I feel. From one hand, there is structures, and the children can go back to school, and we can go back to our normal life, to work. But on the other hand, it's very much tiring. Those past 2 weeks were catastrophical in Israel, so we are very much exhausted, and we need to get back to our normal energy of working and being productive.
We have bombs 3-4 times a day, so people are more likely work remotely from home or stay at home or stay at the shelter or close to home. So sometimes it's a bit scary to go around in the beach and in places that there's no shelter.
Israel attacked Iran last Friday. Soon afterwards, they declared a state of emergency. Schools were shut, the airport was closed, gatherings were banned, and remote working was ordered. But now that emergency has been lifted. Israel has reopened its schools, businesses are back to normal routine, and the airport is open. In Tel Aviv, parents dropped their children off at school today. They were relieved after spending days in shelters.
One word, thank you, God. It's good to bring the kids back to school, good for us, the parents, and also good for the kids because they don't admit it, but they do miss the school. And I have twins, so it's a double happiness to get them back to school.
It's a mixed bag in Israel. People are happy there is a ceasefire. I'm sure the daily missile strikes were traumatizing. At the same time, some people are cautious. They are wary of what the future holds. Which brings us to the other side. In Iran, the people could not rely on air defenses. They also did not have bunkers or bomb shelters. Rights groups say that more than 950 Iranians were killed in the strikes. Plus, around 4,000 were injured. But the official numbers are a bit lower. In Tehran, massive rallies have been organized. Thousands of Iranians hit the streets in celebration. They chanted death to Israel and death to America. Take a look. Interestingly, some Iranians reject the ceasefire. They want the regime to push on, to continue striking Israel. Listen to this.
We don't accept the imposed ceasefire or imposed peace. This ceasefire will result in the enemy getting stronger. We don't approve of the ceasefire at all. We will continue fighting until we are either martyred or win.
The united voice of the Iranian nation is this: Israel started the war, and ending it is up to us. We are not at all satisfied with this ceasefire, and we are fully prepared to sacrifice our lives if Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei gives the order. For the destruction of Israel, no less.
The ones you killed, the Iranian elites, Iran will avenge them. One day they will be avenged. You will be caught off guard. We will catch you off guard. Be sure of that.
There are two possibilities here. One, we are only hearing the belligerent voices. Perhaps the other side is silent. Or two, the state television coverage shaped their opinion. Iranian TV overstated the impact of Tehran's attack. They said Iran had the advantage. Maybe that's why Iranians want the war to continue, because they feel they could have won. Whatever the reason, the mood is celebratory. People have congratulated the Iranian military. They are proudly flying the national flag. Another sentiment on display is mistrust. Iran was preparing for nuclear talks on Sunday, but Israel attacked them in between. Then Donald Trump called for a 2-week timeout, but in 2 days he attacked Iran. So naturally, Iranians are suspicious of America.
All Western countries have been exposed. They lied to the people of Iran, pretending to offer time for negotiations, only to attack from the other side.
They lie, don't believe them. They lie to advance their own agenda and to harm us. We must resist and fight until America and Israel are brought to their knees.
Public funerals are also being organized. Remember, multiple Iranian generals and nuclear scientists were killed, and Iran has a tradition of public mourning. Coffins are carried through the streets and thousands join the procession. It's all part of an effort to rally the people. Over time, Iranians and Israelis will get back to their lives. But make no mistake, this is not the same West Asia anymore. For decades, Israel and Iran fought in the shadows, but now that fight is out in the open. In early 2024, they first launched direct attacks on each other. By mid-2025, they were fighting a war. This is a dramatic escalation between two sworn rivals. Both governments will now go back to the drawing board. They will see what went wrong, where they should invest, and what they could have done differently. Let's hope that exercise remains academic and not a preparation for round 2. Ceasefire or not, nothing has changed for Gaza. People there continue to suffer. Overnight, Israel launched an airstrike on Gaza City. The target was a fuel station. Locals say it was sheltering displaced Palestinians. Take a look at the aftermath. There are fears of a new attack. Gazans are reporting evacuation orders. The Israeli military is dropping leaflets over northern Gaza. The message: leave your home and head south. Aid deliveries are also turning lethal. Most Gazans depend on aid supplies to survive. But deliveries are few, and when the trucks come in, hundreds rush to secure some food. It's a scene of utter chaos and desperation. Take a look at one such aid delivery on Monday. This happened in Gaza's Beit Lahia. Add to that, Israeli attacks. Rights groups say Israeli military is firing on aid seekers. Multiple incidents have been reported since Monday. At least 56 people were reportedly killed, and this isn't random. Most aid shipments into Gaza are managed by the GHF. That is the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. They began work in late May. Since then, more than 410 Gazans have been killed near aid sites. Survivors say their food tastes of blood.
I was going to bring food to my family, to my siblings and my brother. We got injured. There was a lot of fire. It is difficult. It is food with the taste of blood.
The situation is just death. People are dying, and now they are pulling them out from inside.
And what is Israel saying? They noted reports of injuries from firing. They said the incident is under review. But the larger question is, where is this war going? The Iran conflict took attention away from Gaza, but now the focus is back, and there are two possibilities here. One, the ceasefire effect expands to Gaza. Israel used up a lot of its firepower against Iran. Plus, there is a global push for peace. Even close allies are seeking an end to the war, like Germany's Friedrich Merz. Now he is questioning Israel's goals in Gaza.
Über die Zuspitzung das iranische Nuklearprogramm verlieren wir nicht das größere Bild.
We do not lose sight of the bigger picture when it comes to the escalation of the Iranian nuclear program. We take the liberty of asking critical questions about what goal Israel wants to achieve in the Gaza Strip, and we call for humane treatment of the people in the Gaza Strip, especially women, children, and the elderly.
Und den Älteren.
It's the same within Israel. Opposition leader Yair Lapid is calling for peace. Let me quote what he said. And now Gaza, it's time to finish there too. Return the hostages, end the war. Israel needs to start rebuilding. And speaking of hostages, around 50 of them remain inside Gaza. Israel fears that 28 of them are dead. On Sunday, the remains of 3 hostages were recovered from Gaza. All 3 were killed in the October 7th attack. So there is pressure on Netanyahu to end the war, to strike a deal to bring back hostages. If he relents, it could lead to a ceasefire agreement, which is the first possibility. Now, the second is a continuation of operations, perhaps an intensification of attacks. Frankly, that depends on Prime Minister Netanyahu. He is claiming victory over Iran. He says the nuclear program is ruin. But initial reports suggest limited damage. They say Iran's nuclear program was set back by months, not years. Will that force Netanyahu to look for a victory elsewhere, perhaps in Gaza? That's the question to watch out for. But as things stand, the momentum is for peace. Donald Trump has shown that he can force Netanyahu to stand down. Yesterday, he publicly rebuked him. He ordered Israeli jets to return on social media. But will he do the same for Gaza? The president says that great progress is being made.
I think great progress is being made on Gaza. I think because of this attack that we made, I think we're going to have some very good news.
We have seen Western opinion harden in recent weeks. First, France, Britain, and Canada criticized Israel's war in Gaza. Now Germany is seeking a ceasefire, and Trump is losing his patience. The war with Iran showed how dangerous this situation is, how easily it could escalate into a wider war. It seems like world leaders have finally realized that. The question is, can they prevail on Netanyahu? In diplomacy, sometimes the hardest part isn't getting leaders to agree, it's getting them to agree in front of Donald Trump. That was the challenge in front of NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. Now he is hosting the first major summit, the NATO Summit in The Hague. It lasts for 2 days. Attending the crucial meeting are all 32 nation heads of state, top European Union members, a group of Asian allies, and Ukraine's representatives. But in many ways, this year's gathering in The Hague is less about tanks and treaties. It's about stage managing Donald Trump. The US president has no love lost for NATO. We saw this in his first term. He's flirted with the idea of quitting the military alliance altogether. He also raised questions over mutual defense. Now, according to article of NATO Charter, an attack on one is an attack on all. But Donald Trump is not convinced.
Are you still committed to Article 5 of NATO?
It depends on your definition. There's numerous definitions of Article 5. You know that, right? But I'm committed to being their friends. You know, I've become friends with many of those leaders, and I'm committed to helping them.
Comments just now about Article 5. That will probably make some people in Europe concerned. Can you clarify what you mean? Are you still committed to mutual defense?
I'm committed to saving lives. I'm committed to life and safety. And I'm going to give you an exact definition when I get there. I just don't want to do it on the back of an airplane.
But the US president quickly changed his mind in 24 hours. When asked about Article 5 on day one, he said he is with the alliance all the way. And the reason could be a major announcement. For years, Trump has asked NATO members to hike defense spending. And it looks like he finally got what he wanted, or at least a big part of it.
There are very big things to announce today. I don't know if you've taken the vote or you're going to take the vote, but I've been asking them to go up to 5% for a number of years, and they're going up to 5%. That's a big, from 2%. And a lot of people didn't even pay the 2%. So I think it's going to be very big news. NATO is going to become very strong with us.
Here's what NATO actually agreed to. 3.5% of GDP on core defense spending by 2035. That is things like tanks, fighter jets, and air defense systems. On top of that, another 1.5% would go toward a broader defense-related bucket. And that includes cybersecurity, infrastructure, and other investments. Added up, and the headline is 5%. But the reality is a little different. Still, Trump got what he wanted, or at least a version of it that he could sell.
It's a great victory for everybody, I think, and we will be equalized very shortly, and that's the way it has to be. It's going to be a lot of money, too, a lot of defense.
In fact, the entire summit has been engineered to avoid upsetting Trump. The official program was shortened. Trump's accommodations were upgraded. He stayed the night at the Royal Palace. Even the seating charts were made with great scrutiny to make sure that all Trump was surrounded by was friendly faces. The goal was simple: keep Trump from blowing things up. So NATO chief Mark Rutte leaned into a tried and tested strategy. Part charm offensive, part strategic flattery.
They're not going to be fighting each other. They've had it. They've had a big fight, like two kids in a schoolyard. You know, they fight like hell. You can't stop them. Let them fight for about 2-3 minutes, then it's easier to stop them.
And then Daddy has to sometimes do strong language.
You have to use strong language. Every once in a while you have to use a certain word.
But with Trump taken care of, NATO had another problem: Russia. The Ukraine war has transformed NATO in ways no previous crisis ever has. The alliance has rediscovered purpose, but that purpose depends on unity and deterrence, hence the push for more spending. But not everyone is thrilled about it. Spain, for instance, balked at the last minute, raising eyebrows and nearly unraveling the whole deal. Madrid claims to have negotiated a side agreement. However, the NATO chief says otherwise.
Countries have to find the money. It's not easy. These are political decisions. I totally recognize that. But at the same time, there is absolute conviction with my colleagues at the table that given the threat from the Russians, given the international security situation, there is no alternative. We've got to do this, really.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has arrived at The Hague. He was once the star of NATO summits, but this time he plays a more subdued role. After all, his last face-off with Trump ended in an infamous Oval Office shouting match. Nobody wanted a repeat performance on European soil. Zelensky himself arrived in a suit too. But behind closed doors, he has the reassurance of the military alliance. NATO leaders reaffirmed their support for Ukraine and its eventual membership. But in the final communique, is unlikely to mention Kiev's bid. Trump has already ruled it out. So what does the Hague summit really plan to achieve? On paper, a defense spending breakthrough, a show of unity against Russia, and a reaffirmation of NATO's purpose. But behind the scenes, it was something else entirely. A carefully choreographed balancing act to keep one man from derailing the alliance. Because in this version of NATO, the biggest threat isn't always Moscow. Sometimes it's a Truth Social post. It was just past noon in India. The Falcon 9 rocket thundered off to space, taking off from the launch pad at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Back in India, the whole country was brimming with pride, millions watching the launch live. After all, 41 years had passed since India last sent one of its own into space. And this was not just another space mission. It was a homecoming. On board this Axiom 4 mission was the group captain, Shubhanshu Shukla. He is piloting this mission.
नमस्कार मेरे प्यारे देशवासियों, what a ride! 40 साल बाद हम वापस अंतरिक्ष में पहुंच गए हैं और कमाल की राइड थी। इस समय हम 7.5 किलोमीटर प्रति सेकंड की रफ्तार से पृथ्वी के चारों तरफ घूम रहे हैं और मेरे कंधे पे मेरे साथ मेरा पुरंगा है जो मुझे बता रहा है कि नहीं हूँ, मैं आप सबके साथ हूँ।
Shubhanshu Shukla is the second to achieve this feat. 41 years ago, Rakesh Sharma became the first Indian to travel to space. It was the height of the Cold War. The Soviet Union offered India a seat on the Soyuz spacecraft. Sharma spent 7 days aboard the Salyut 7 space station. He conducted experiments. He gazed at India from the Earth's orbit and said the words we all remember. That was in 1984. India was a young economy, still finding its footing. The Cold War was simmering. The idea of an Indian-made rocket carrying an Indian astronaut into space, that was the stuff of science fiction. For decades, it stayed that way. Other nations raced to the moon. Space became a playground for billionaires. Private rockets took over the skies. But India built its space program quietly and patiently, one launch at a time. And the Indian Space Agency has since achieved a lot. But the dream of putting another Indian in space was still a dream until now.
ये मेरी इंटरनेशनल स्पेस स्टेशन तक की जर्नी की शुरुआत नहीं है, ये भारत के ह्यूमन स्पेस प्रोग्राम की शुरुआत है और मैं चाहता हूं कि आप सभी देशवासी इस यात्रा का हिस्सा बने। आपका भी सीना जैसे चौड़ा होना चाहिए, आप भी उतना ही एक्साइटमेंट दिखाइए। आइए हम सब मिलकर भारत की ह्यूमन स्पेस प्रोग्राम की जर्नी की शुरुआत करें। धन्यवाद। जय हिंद, जय भारत।
Shubhanshu Shukla was born in Lucknow in 1985. He came of age in a very different India than that of Rakesh Sharma, an India of liberalized markets and Chandrayaan missions. He joined the Indian Air Force in 2006. Quickly, he built a reputation as a fearless pilot. Over nearly 2 decades, he flew everything from MiGs and Sukhois, logging over 2,000 flying hours. In the last few years, India began scouting astronauts for Gaganyaan. Now that is the country's first human spaceflight mission. Shukla was one of 4 people shortlisted. Now his resume made him an ideal candidate, physically resilient, mentally sharp, and used to high-stakes flying. That training would pay off when ISRO negotiated a historic seat on Axiom Space's AX-4 mission. Shubhanshu Shukla got India's ticket back to the stars. Which brings us to the AX-4 mission. It's led by NASA legend Peggy Whitson. It is a collaboration between a lot of agencies: Axiom Space, NASA, ISRO, the European Space Agency, and SpaceX. The crew includes 4 astronauts, including 2 others from Poland and Hungary. Shukla will now spend the next 2 weeks on the International Space Station. The crew will conduct 60 scientific experiments. 7 of them are from India. ISRO's experiments will understand microgravity and the effect of space on biology. Shukla will even speak to Indian school children from space. And this is quite a significant moment. After all, India's first rockets were transported on bicycles. Satellite parts were once hauled on bullock carts. When ISRO launched its first satellite in 1975, the world laughed. India's space program was mocked, but India's space agency persisted. In 2008, India launched its first moon mission, Chandrayaan-1. In 2013, it sent a probe to Mars. In 2023, it landed on the moon's south pole. And now it is planning the Gaganyaan mission. Group Captain Shukla's mission is a vital test run for that. The data he brings back will shape the future of Gaganyaan. Right now, India's space economy is worth $8 billion. By 2033, it hopes to grow to $44 billion. And it is not just ISRO. There are private space companies too. Since 2020, over 200 space startups have emerged in India, and there are missions lined up. India is expected to fly its first uncrewed Gaganyaan test soon, and the crewed mission should be following in 2026 or 2027. Now, a permanent Indian space station is targeted for 2035. A moon landing with astronauts is planned for 2040. All of this on a fraction of NASA's budget. The last time India sent a human to space, it was still finding its place in the world. This time, it's shaping the future. Shubhanshu Shukla is just the prologue in India's space story, because space is no longer the playground of a few, and India is no longer waiting for a seat at the table. It is building its own. Now let's turn our attention to Kenya. Thousands of protesters have taken to the streets to mark a year since huge demonstrations rocked the nation. Last year, thousands protested the government's contentious tax plan. They laid bare the anger at President William Ruto. And today, protesters are marching again. Schools and businesses have been shut. The government has ordered TV and radio stations to stop live coverage. There is a huge deployment of police in major cities. They have shot at protesters and fired tear gas. At least 2 people have died and several others have been injured. Here's a report.
On this day, last year, tens of thousands of Kenyans took to the streets. They challenged a proposed bill that would have raised taxes on everyday goods and services. The demonstrations were largely mobilized by the youngsters. They clashed with the police and stormed the parliament. President William Ruto called the protesters dangerous criminals. More than 60 people were killed, and hundreds were injured. Ultimately, Ruto backed off. The bill was not signed into law, and protests were halted. But since then, people's anger has continued to simmer. And now, it has fueled fresh protests.
We are here as the young generation we want a complete overhaul of the system. The system is rotten, the system is wrong, and we want a complete overhaul.
Today, thousands of protesters marched across Kenya to mark a year since the huge demonstrations. In Nairobi, they walked towards the parliament and the president's office waving flags and blowing whistles. Roads leading to parliament were barricaded with razor wire. Lawmakers left the parliament building fearing a repeat of last year. Banks, schools, and businesses were shuttered. There was a media blackout. All television and radio stations were asked to stop their coverage of the protests. And the protests quickly turned violent. The police clashed with the demonstrators. They fired gunshots, tear gas, and water cannons. At least 2 protesters died from gunshot wounds in Nairobi, and several others were injured. But despite the protests turning deadly, crowds did not disperse for hours. After all, Kenyans want to remind the government that this is not a problem that can go away so easily. Ruto was elected in 2022. He came to power on promises of uplifting the poor. But under his reign, economic hardship has persisted. His government has come under fire for corruption scandals, cracking down on dissent, and his persistence to increase taxes. A year after the bloodshed of the previous bill, Ruto introduced another one. So people accuse the government of ignoring the very demands that fueled unrest last year. The second big problem is police brutality.
We cannot have extrajudicial killings going on. We are losing people every day. It is becoming a massacre in Kenya.
Recently, a 31-year-old teacher and blogger died in police custody after being detained over a social media post. In a separate case, a Nairobi street hawker remains in intensive care after being shot by police last week. The shooting has only deepened mistrust in the Ruto administration. It has also drawn international condemnation. The embassies of the US, the UK, and other Western nations have released a joint statement urging all involved to facilitate peaceful demonstrations and to refrain from violence. Amid escalating tensions, on Tuesday, Ruto gave an official address. Ahead of protests, he said, "You cannot intimidate the police. You cannot use force against the police, or insult or threaten the police. You are threatening our nation." Clearly, he is not willing to budge. But for the majority of Kenyans, it is he who is a threat to the nation. So with renewed anger, people have taken to the streets demanding accountability. As deadly protests rock the nation once again, Ruto can only hope that they don't topple his government.
Thailand's political crisis is worsening. Their prime minister is fighting to keep her chair. Her name is Paetongtarn Shinawatra. Less than a year after taking power, there are calls for her removal. Protesters have surrounded her residence. Allies are ditching her, and a no-confidence vote is being planned. All of this over a leaked phone call. Thailand and neighboring Cambodia are locked in a border face-off. But amid tensions, the Thai Prime Minister spoke to Cambodia's former leader. When that call leaked, all hell broke loose. The question is, will this cost Paetongtarn her job? Our next report tells you.
A powerful last name, heiress to a multi-billion-dollar business empire, and a record-setting premiership. Until recently, all was well for Thailand's Prime Minister, Paetongtarn Shinawatra. But now, she is fighting for political survival. Protesters surrounded her house on Tuesday. They unfurled a 100-meter-long banner, criticizing the Prime Minister. Their demand? Paetongtarn's resignation. Next week, another challenge awaits the Prime Minister. A no-confidence motion in Parliament. It is being proposed by a former coalition ally of Paetongtarn. They left the alliance last week, and next week, they are planning to oust the Prime Minister. The question is, how did things go so wrong? And can Paetongtarn survive? At the center of this crisis is the border between Thailand and Cambodia. It was drawn in the early 20th century, during the French occupation of Southeast Asia. But parts of this border remain disputed. Around late May this year, there was a flare-up. One Cambodian soldier was shot dead in a brief exchange of gunfire. This incident led to a rise in nationalism on both sides. But in the middle of this, Paetongtarn made a mistake. She spoke to Cambodia's former strongman on the phone. In that call, she called him uncle, and appeared to criticize Thai military commanders. That is a strict no in Thailand, where the military is a center of power. When the call leaked, Paetongtarn apologized to the country, but she maintained that it was a negotiation tactic.
I would like to apologize for the leaked audio of my conversation with a Cambodian leader, which has caused public resentment.
But the damage was done. Tongtan's coalition ally abandoned her after the leak. She also faces public pressure to step down. And how is the Prime Minister responding? By tightening the screws on neighboring Cambodia. Last week, Tongtan visited soldiers at Thailand's border with Cambodia. This week, she decided to close the border altogether. All border crossings have been shut by Thailand's military. No vehicles, no travelers, and no Thai or Cambodian nationals will be allowed to cross. The Prime Minister is also targeting alleged transnational crime groups in Cambodia.
Regarding the export of electricity, oil, and goods across the border, we will cease exports of goods that support illicit activity by transnational criminal groups. More specifically, we will consider the appropriateness of suspending exports of oil and fuel to Cambodia that are being used for various illegal activities.
Tongtan's strategy appears to be clear. She is cracking down on Cambodia to negate accusations of appeasement. But will it work? The ruling party is confident. They believe they have the numbers to defeat the no-confidence motion. But the border dispute? That is slowly spiraling into a larger crisis. One that could weaken Southeast Asian unity and effectiveness.
Now let's turn our attention to Venice, where Jeff Bezos is all set to marry Lauren Sanchez. Bezos is the founder of Amazon, and he is one of the richest people on the planet, which is why his choice of wedding venue has been met with protests. Venice is battling over tourism. Locals say that they have been priced out of the city. People fear that the Bezos wedding will turn Venice into an even bigger playground for the rich. For days now, thousands of people have taken to the streets. They have threatened to jump into the canals along with inflatable crocodiles. So Bezos has been forced to alter his wedding plans. Here's a report.
Venice is like no other. The city seems to have risen out of the water. There's a canal view down every street. Bridges stop dead at front doors. Churches are adorned with Renaissance art masterpieces. And that's probably why one of the richest men on the planet wants to hold his nuptials here. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos is getting married to Lauren Sanchez. It will be a days-long event, likely to occur between 26th and June 28th. And no expense has been spared for this Venetian wedding. There is a carefully selected, star-studded guest list of about 200 people, possibly including Elon Musk, Kim Kardashian, Leonardo DiCaprio, and several of the Trumps. About 95 private jets are expected to jam up the Venice airport. Private yachts have started taking over the busy harbor. At least 5 hotels with $10,000 a-night rooms have been completely booked out. And former U.S. Marines have been hired to provide security. To answer your burning question, yes, this is a costly affair. Reportedly, worth over $55 million. But fret not, because the groom is probably not worried. Bezos' net worth stands at $227 billion, which is also why locals are not standing for his wedding. In March, Venice's millionaire mayor, Luigi Brugnero, confirmed that the couple would be getting married in the city. Since then, protests have flooded the floating city. Thousands of people have taken to the streets. Banners screaming, "No space for Bezos," have been plastered on the walls. In the main public square, a huge sign has been unfurled, saying, "If you can rent Venice for your wedding, you can pay more tax."
As usual, only those who have money can do this. Venice has now become a tourist property. They've become the masters now.
If you can afford to shut down a city for a wedding, then yes, you can pay more taxes.
The wedding guests started arriving yesterday, so protesters ramped up their moves, threatening to launch themselves into canals near key venues and fill the waterways with inflatable crocodiles. As absurd as this sounds, it has worked, because the wedding venue has been moved from a majestic 16th century building in the city center to Arsenal, hidden between a historic complex of shipyards, surrounded by fortified walls, because apparently the Marines are not protection enough. And this move is a major victory for the campaigners. Their protest is not about the wedding itself. It's about what this wedding represents. The display of an arrogant, unsustainable lifestyle by a multi-billionaire, whose company Amazon has been accused of tax evasion and abuses against workers. For Venetians, this is personal. For years now, the city has suffered from over-tourism. Locals say that they're being priced out of the city. And with the Bezos wedding, this World Heritage Site could become an even bigger playground for the rich. But with the threat of crocodiles, albeit inflatable ones, protesters have rained on the parade. After all, at weddings, you are asked to speak now or forever hold your peace. And Venetians sure are speaking up.
The fashion industry has a dirty little secret. It loves borrowing from other cultures and giving it a Western spin. Case in point, Prada's latest runway show. Models walked out in tan ring-toed sandals, or as millions of Indians instantly recognized, Kolhapuri chappals, a design that has been handcrafted in Maharashtra for centuries. But on that Milan runway, there was no single mention or credit. Just a designer label and a designer price tag of 1.2 lakh rupees for a pair. Our next story takes a closer look at fashion's favorite habit of stealing.
At Prada's Spring-Summer 2026 men's show, a certain tan ring-toed sandal strutted down the runway. The models marched, the fashion press applauded, and Indian viewers watching on their screens were left with one question. Is that a Kolhapuri chappal? Well, it was. The Kolhapuri chappal has been handcrafted for centuries in the town of Kolhapur in Maharashtra. Now it has arrived at the holy altar of European fashion. But its link to Indian legacy is missing. Because this was not cultural appreciation, it was cultural appropriation with better lighting. The defining ringed toe, the slim profile, the sun-baked leather, every detail here screamed Kolhapuri. Prada even sent out show invites with leather toe rings as a nod to the collection. But there is no mention of the Kolhapuri anywhere. What we are watching here is the fashion industry's favorite trick. Take, rename, sell and deny. You take a centuries-old Indian design, you rename it artisanal footwear, you sell it for 1.2 lakh rupees per pair or over $1,000, and then deny all connection to its origin. Also, this isn't a one-off situation. Remember the Scandinavian scarf scandal? That moment when a TikTok brand described a vibrant embroidered shoulder-draped fabric as a Scandinavian wedding scarf? South Asians weren't confused. We knew what it was, our dupattas. But to the Western eye, a new aesthetic was born, or rather rebranded. And it goes on and on. For example, the paisley pattern. It's been colonized, commercialized and claimed by the West, even though the real pattern is from Persia and India. Lehengas have been rebranded as maxi skirts, bindis as festival gems, henna as temporary ink tattoos, dhotis as harem pants. The West steals like a kleptomaniac and conveniently forgets. This is not to say that fashion should only be based on purism. Fashion thrives on fusion. No one is saying only Indians can wear Indian clothes. But there's a difference between wearing something with reverence and repackaging it for clout. You can't call it appreciation when the original communities are left out of the narrative and, more importantly, the profit. When heritage becomes a hashtag, a lot is lost. Livelihoods of artisans, especially from marginalized communities. It steals their economic opportunity and, more importantly, their voice. If Prada did it right, they would have partnered with the Kolhapuri craftspeople and acknowledged the origins. But that did not happen. And no matter how many times it is called out, the next appropriation is already loading. Maybe it's a sari blouse masquerading as a cropped bridal top. Maybe it's juttis reintroduced as Moroccan slippers. Who knows anymore? The West will pretend it was born from a dream and a mood board in Florence. But the world knows the truth. Fashion doesn't need more inspiration, it needs attribution. Because without credit, without context and without compensation, it is not design. It's daylight robbery in designer packaging.
And now it's time for Vantage shots, images that tell the story. Drones tackle Mount Everest trash crisis, carrying garbage down the slope. A Kim Jong-un impersonator protests outside the NATO summit venue. And New Yorkers cool down on the streets as the city breaks heat records. And finally, taking you back in history. On this day in 1975, then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi imposed emergency in India. It lasted for 21 months. The emergency was one of the darkest periods in post-independent Indian history. It was marked by stifling of dissent and government crackdown on civil liberties. Leaving you on that note, thank you for watching. See you tomorrow.
That message, you do anything, and you know, we've got nukes. Your predicament? I don't think so. Yeah, it's Instagram. Giving you North Korean virus. My Instagram, my. Dictators.
Firstpost now available in 9 languages on YouTube. English,
$36 trillion.
French,
Le FMI,
German,
Geschäftsführenden Direktor,
Hindi,
$30 trillion ka-charge.
Indonesian,
Pemerintah tanpa pemeriksaan.
Italian,
Sekali radikali.
Japanese, Portuguese,
por causa do próprio balanço patrimonial.
Spanish.
Beautiful bill.
Go to Settings, click on Audio Track and select the language of your choice. Be the first to know what's happening around you in your first language. Firstpost.